broadcast, blah, blah, blah. That seems fine. It says I have excellent this, good that. Connect dialing, whatnot. Oh, before we go fully live, I mean, we are technically live, so there could get chatter and whatnot. But before I officially start the whole thing up, Les, we met. I want to say now 2 years ago, because this has been we've been doing this as a Facebook page. We turned it into Drink Nova Scotia Dry as a podcast show, so we kind of changed the face of it. But we back 2 years ago, we were trying to go into the pubs into the tap rooms to try a flight of things, and we came in, and you actually happened to be behind the bar that night, and you told us an awful lot about what was on tap. So we did record live there a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I remember that. It was good. It was fun. I mean, it wasn't really during the COVID time, though, was it? Was it kind of when COVID was kind of winding down a bit, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, hang on. I've got it all here listed.
I thought it was longer ago than that, but I can't keep up with the way the time changes.
You're probably right.
As I get older, the time seems to go faster and faster.
Let's see. If
I think it was 2 years ago. It was.
Yeah.
Thinking it was.
Yeah.
There we
I
are.
remember the table having some flights.
June 14th, 2022.
Oh,
wow.
Close.
So a little less than 2 years ago, actually. But oh yeah, I mean it's been a long pandemic for everybody, I have to say.
Yeah.
Anywho, better, brighter, and lovelier things. So for all, everyone seated comfortably. Everyone have a beer and a receptacle or everything that you want to have handy with you.
I think so.
Okay.
Was there a certain beer you guys were going to start with?
A certain what?
Was there a certain beer you guys wanted to start with?
Our tradition is we usually go with the lowest alcohol percentage to the highest alcohol percentage. But when we have a guest, someone like the brewer themselves, when we have you on the show, we just say everything's out the window, whatever you want to do. So whichever one you'd like to do in order first. If you've got a story, then we can do that too.
No, we can start with I think the Festbier is the lowest ABV. So
that's what I've got. Yeah, I've got a 5.4 and then 6.4 and then 7.0.
Yep.
If all our numbers are correct. All right. Well, the official start is I am Ross. Joining me is my co-host Ian, and we are actually talking with Les Bart of Roof Hound Brewing, and together all of us are, well, I can't speak for Les, but Ian and I are trying to drink Nova Scotia Dry, but it's an ongoing project. We're learning how behind the times we actually are. It's going to take the rest of our lives to do this and then some. Someone invent immortality, and then we'll be perfectly fine. But Les, I wanted to say, I was saying before we started that we have been to the establishment. We went to the Roof Hound tap room in Kingston nearly 2 years ago, and we tried we tried flights there. That was back when we were kind of going out and going on location. But then we decided that we couldn't have as many beers if we wanted to drive home afterwards, so we turned it into a bit more of a remote location thing, and that seemed the safest option.
Smart. That's very responsible.
I wanted to thank you for technically being on the show for the second time.
Great. Thanks for having me.
So I want to compliment both of you on your sweaters this evening. Ross, your usual wonderful coloured sweater, which I obviously love, but that's totally the kind of cardigan that I would be sporting in the wintertime. I think it's massive. And mine's just a boring old grey charcoal sweater thing. Yours looks, I want to climb inside your sweater, is what I'm saying.
I'm currently in the sweater, so you have to wait your turn. But I'm in the brewery tonight, so it's a little chilly in here. So I threw on my favorite sweater.
It's like I know that you're obviously in the brewery, but the huge silver thing behind you, I'm sure you're going to tell us what that actually is. It looks like you're in front of the lunar module in 1969.
Yes,
I'm
that's
sure
what it is.
That's what it is.
What?
Okay, then.
Like all the other billionaires, I'm preparing to leave the Earth the moment things kick off here. So it's a SpaceX ship disguised as a beer tank.
Leave your sweater behind.
I literally did not know the word for it. We usually call it all sorts of things. We were like, it's, the beer oven, the beer stove. But okay, so that's your beer
It would be
tank.
a conical fermenter if you want to get technical.
Excellent.
Hang on.
Thanks.
It's the cone shape of the bottom.
Conical.
Lets the yeast kind of collect at the bottom there. You can open the bottom portlet and let the yeast out. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's
But
fair.
then there's some that would be like a dish shape. So we have like more of a flat bottom on the bottom of the fermenter. But the conical fermenter is the most common.
When I know there are certain places, and we could do this with our own primary fermentation buckets, of course, Ross, which I'm going to be doing with you very soon, I'm sure, because you've got this lovely kit that we're gonna do together. You've been wanting to do it for ages, but I'm kind of understanding that sometimes with the primary fermentation, all the what do they call the slurry that's left behind after the first
The dregs.
transfer?
Yeah. Like the
Right.
yeast cake at the bottom or the dregs.
Yeah. Aren't certain drinks made using that, like really crappy alcoholic, cloudy, yeasty things? Aren't certain you can use it in certain drinks? Can you not?
Yeah, well, that is the yeast that's dropping out now. Like in the fermentation, like I get home brewers who do a primary fermentation and a secondary fermentation because the yeast drop into the bottom of the bucket, and you don't really have a cone-shaped bottom to discard that. So you would swap it out. But I mean, us like commercial brewers, we'd have a tank like this where all that stuff drops to the bottom of the cone. You just let it out the bottom.
I was speaking with someone only a week or two ago that when he was doing all his homebrew, he basically had a mini version of that. So he was turning his primary fermenter upside down, and there was some kind of airlock that would siphon off without having to transfer it into the carboy. Yeah. So he was bypassing a step. So
because every time you move it, you're risking a chance of infections or you get lost and stuff like that. Yeah.
Before we get too heavy into the chemistry, and we probably will get into the chemistry of it all, I think the best thing that we should do in the early stages is, Les, if you want to take a few minutes to just introduce us to Roof Hound Brewery, how long you've been brewing, how long you've been in your establishment, how long Roof Hound has been brewing, and how long you personally been brewing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I didn't drink a drop until my early 30s.
And that's the end of the show. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. And we just have to, we'll be at it.
So my liver's barely used.
Well, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Virgin territory.
Ready to roll.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I was actually a preacher for 10 years. Went to Bible college and preacher, did weddings and funerals and the whole thing, and didn't drink a drop until I was about 32. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I started, buying stuff at the Digby liquor store, which I thought I was trying all the beers, but I was really just trying various versions of an American light lager. Because that's all. I thought I had experienced all the beers, and I was bored with it. So I started to, drive to like Bridgetown at the end of the line pub, or Rutter's in Yarmouth, or Paddy's pub, because back at the time that was about all there really was. You could get like a dark beer. Like, how mysterious is that? And then I, started drinking those things. And then my dad was making wine, and he was loving that process. So he kind of thought that maybe I should get a hobby. So I started making the beer and was a home brewer, turned my laundry room into a little brewery. I loved the gadgetry of it too. I had like liquid cooled, I had like these tubs with temperature sensors that I put the carboys in and would squirt hot and cold water into it around the carboy to keep the temperature locked in. And I built my own brew kettle, kind of like a Grainfather, but it was like before that. I built it myself with like planes from the internet and stuff like that. There was circulating pumps and like this crank to pull the mash basket out. I just like that kind of thing. And I was working on the family farm, and I was listening to podcasts. I learned to brew from the Brewing Network out of Berkeley, California, and a lot of YouTube stuff and just reading. So I would be on the farm like 8 hours a day listening to podcasts on my headphones, just working on the farm and brewing 2 or 3 times a week. And there was no way, because I was like, my tolerance is so low, there's no way I can drink 60 liters a week, although I wanted to make 60 liters a week. So I had a kegerator in my kitchen with 6 taps, and I just had a lot of friends in there drinking all the time and taking growlers home, because I just wanted to practice. I wanted to get the reps in.
Trying different things,
different recipes and stuff like that.
That seems like a really great way to make and keep friends too. Jeez, that's
oh yeah,
easy.
Yeah, I remember there was a hurricane came and the power was out for 9 days and the liquor store was closed. I was a hero that week. I was a hero, saving lives.
Yeah, one beer at a time.
Yeah, so that's what I was doing as a hobby, and I was cooking a little bit. So I was cooking and brewing and putting photos on Instagram, and started. It was just kind of my hobby. I didn't love farming, but it was my family business. And then the farming had a serious downturn, and I needed to find another career. And I got invited on MasterChef Canada, and I flew out there and did a few episodes of that. And then came home and never worked in the beer industry, never worked in the food industry. And this idiot cashed in his life insurance, opened a brewery and a restaurant the same day. 8 years ago, it'll be 8 years. 8 years ago now, I was working on it. I came up the road with the tractor and cut the sod off and put the forms down, poured the concrete, put up the walls. My son was only 10 years old at the time. We put up the walls and did everything. I only hired the roof, the steel on the roof to be done, and the electrical and the plumbing.
Now that's the place in
even some of the equipment I made. Yeah,
that's the place in Digby though.
Yes, in Digby. Yeah, the original location. We opened in August of 2016, so it'll be 8 years this summer. Yeah, very DIY. And at that time, I think it was only like the 14th brewery in the province.
Okay.
That was like, things were growing, but it wasn't quite crazy yet.
Hadn't quite exploded yet, yeah.
No. So it was a little more forgiving back then, because we were in like the Brew Nosers homebrew club and stuff like that. Like I worked a lot with like Greg Nash would try my beers and give me advice, and Jeff Saunders and guys like that. I brewed my very first batch actually with terrible, I can't remember his name now, at Rudders in Yarmouth.
Oh. I'm
embarrassed, I can't remember his name, but great older guy. And I was down there and brewed with him a few days in a row, and it was pretty exciting. It was the early days. So the industry was a lot more friendly back then, I remember. There was a lot of excitement. Like everybody was beer fans first, and they wanted just better beer. And we really didn't have a lot of big companies yet that were like it wasn't a business yet. It was still a passion thing. We'd go to the beer festivals, and everybody would be excited and happy for one another and try this, try that, and we partied together after. It was like a very exciting early time in the industry. It was a lot of fun. You could call up any brewery and ask them for help, and they would help you.
Is it not anymore then? Is it a little more cutthroat?
I find it's not as friendly as it was.
Oh,
I've had breweries kind of steal ideas and steal tap accounts, and I think the debt gets up and the restaurant industry gets tougher, and COVID hits, and you've got some of these bigger companies with big sales forces, and there doesn't seem to be as much respect and honor, dignity as there used to be.
Wow.
I'm not naming any names, but I find it's a lot less friendly. And when you don't have the beer festivals for a while and stuff like that too, right? Like you don't have the face-to-face interaction. You're not having that same kind of camaraderie in it.
Yeah,
I think it's changed a lot. But it was very exciting that I could be a part of that in the early days. Like it was a really exciting time. Really exciting time. Real brother and sisterhood. Like people were close. They helped each other out.
I think about everyone we talked to has talked fondly about the Brew Nosers. I couldn't remember the name of the Brew Nosers last week when I was mentioning that to our previous guest, and I think I called them the Blue Nosers or something like that. Yeah. Close enough.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was so many guys that are brewers, guys and gals that are brewers now, they're professionals now, that we were all just home brewers dreaming together. We'd get together at somebody's place and swap beers and have a barbecue and talk shit, and just dreaming and plotting and planning. And some of the professional guys would come, we'd be so in awe, ask them questions.
Well, maybe that's it. It's the curse of success. It's the curse of the success of craft beer production, maybe in Nova Scotia.
I don't know. I think it's a natural thing. I think it's kind of natural with any industry, really. It's there was that dreaming stage and that camaraderie. And now it just seems like it's settled into being a business. People have big breweries with mortgage payments and bills to pay, and the restaurant businesses and bars have really struggled, especially through COVID. There's been a lot of places go out of business. So everyone's kind of scrambling to get keg accounts and stuff like that and pay the bills. And it's not the same as it used to be, but I mean, I still love it. But now I'm more connected with my local community than I was before. Like in the early days when it was only 14 breweries, it was easy to have your beer all over the province in kegs and stuff like that. Now that there's, what's the latest count? I think it was like 60 not too long ago.
I think
so
we've been guessing around 70 recently, but a number of them did close, so we must be getting a little lower down.
May I just ask very quickly before we set off? I'm sure that I'm chomping at the bit, as I can tell Ross is too.
I'm thirsty.
You started your venture 8 years ago, and you said your son was 10 at the time, and you didn't start drinking until you were 32. How's your wee man? Is he involved already?
Well, yeah. I mean, even when he was a baby, he was watching me in the brewery in the basement, in the laundry room. I caught him sucking the foam off of a pint a few times when he was little, and when your dad opens a commercial brewery, sometimes some bottles seem to sneak out the back door in a backpack. Not intentionally, but he was busted by his grandfather one time with a very suspicious sounding backpack on the way to a beach party when he was 15.
Yeah. We've all been there.
Yeah. So no, he didn't wait.
Not less than I. Not less than I. I didn't drink until I was 21. I thought I was an old drinker.
That's very American of you.
It wasn't. I wasn't giving myself a rule or anything like that. It was just it's just how it sort of worked out for my own sake. But so as we were mentioning, the lowest of the alcohol percentages that we have today is 5.4% on the Festbier. So what we usually do is we try to read off the label on the can/bottle, and it says absolutely nothing. It's just Festbier, literally written on the thing. So then I get to go over to the website. There we are, roofhound.ca. Go check that out, and I could.
Nothing on there but that.
Nope, nothing. So luckily, we're talking to you, so we get the actual wording, the description of the beer straight from the source. But we get to crack open into this. Let us know, what is the Festbier?
It was like an Oktoberfest, kind of like a German style lager that I made back in the fall. I've been experimenting a little bit with like lager yeast. I was a little bit late to that game. I had tried some in previous years, but they didn't turn out, so they went down the drain because lager yeast is a different beast. But we had kind of like a light lager come out in the summer. And then I put this one out in the fall. I have a red lager in one of these tanks right now that'll be coming out soon. Yeah.
Color that was.
Oh, no, the color on that is gorgeous. This beautiful coppery color.
Yeah.
Golden color.
It's been so long since I've made it now, and my notes are on the phone that I'm looking into, so I can't look it up right now. But it's got the real, authentic German hops and grains and yeast strain and all that stuff. So, yeah.
So is it like a traditional Bavarian Oktoberfest?
As close as I could make it, yeah. I'm not very German, but like I said, I'm kind of new into the lager game, but I was really pleased with how it turned out. I mean, this is how I judge a beer. I judge a beer by, if I brewed it, would I be disappointed? And that's a beer that I've brewed or a beer that I've bought. Like, would I be disappointed in this? Did it miss the target? Did it hit the target? And I'm pretty self-critical. I put a lot of batches down the drain. Yeah, because I just don't want to put out something that doesn't live up to my standard.
I have never thrown a batch of beer down the drain. I've only had, in all the years I've been making homebrew, Les, I've had one misfire. And I think that was purely due to the yeast that didn't go off. And then I tried repitching the yeast afterwards, ones that had been there, which was a complete disaster. So I went through the whole, I ended up transferring it as normal. I racked it as normal and waited 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It was still as flat as a fart. But you know what? I still drank it because I thought, I've put $60 into this. I've put my time into it. So I'm gonna drink it all, even though it's terrible.
But if you have 3,000 liters of something and it's not good, you can't have that ruin your name.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
I definitely love it. When you say it's you're in trying for a lager, it's very copper for a lot. Most of the lagers we try are much lighter in color, very flaxen.
Yeah, but there's lots of lagers, international lagers that aren't straw colored.
And we're learning that, but every time, we've got like the occasional Schwarzbier and a dark lager. We've had a few different things like this, but so this is sort of somewhere nicely right in the middle there. But I wanted to bring to the attention that the Roof Hound, the bottles, what I still call stubby bottles, because I think that makes me really old because it's not a long neck bottle. But aside from, you can still get, I think Off Track in Bedford is still selling a couple of their most recent ones in glass bottles. But even Hilltop Hops down in Windsor, they've transferred from the brown bottles over to glasses. They had the long neck bottles, and then not to glasses, to cans. And I think you might be the last brewery.
Well, I'm proud to be. I know some other people that said they would never change, and they released their cans. And they did it on an April Fool's Day, and I thought it was a joke. Ooh. We won't name names. But they released their cans on social media on April Fool's Day, and I'm like, this has got to be a joke. I'm like, no, it was actually real. But I like the bottles. I like the glass feel, the look. It's nostalgic for me. Like I didn't drink till my 30s, but I remember in the early 80s, like being at my grandparents' house, and like my grandfather had these stubby bottles rolling around on the floor, and it was just, that was beer to me. That was just stuck in my brain as a young kid, that this is what beer comes in. And I had this nostalgic idea about it, and the brewery is named after a get drunk cheap scheme that my grandfather came up with. This grandfather that had the stubby bottles. So my grandfather Joe was always he had 11 kids, didn't have money for booze, so he would make this stuff of raisins and brown sugar in a bucket. And, that's where this one came from. So he made this stuff with raisins and brown sugar, and he drank it, and he dumped the raisins out in the yard, and Lady the hound dog got into the raisins and got drunk and climbed up the wood pile onto the roof of the house, and she was howling and moaning on the roof of the house, and he was howling and moaning drunk inside of the house, and the 11 kids thought that was pretty entertaining. So then many years later, when I'm a home brewer, my grandmother tells me this story. So I made a beer with raisins and brown sugar, and I called it Big Brown Roof Hound. That was my very first original recipe as a home brewer.
Oh, wow.
So then as I'm trying to find a name for my brewing company, I came up with Roof Hound, because you don't want to propose something that's copywritten, and I didn't think anyone else was crazy enough to call a brewing company that. So there we go. So that became the name, and a lot of people found that story kind of entertaining, and it's kind of like a local folklore kind of thing, right? Like the neighbors talked about that for years. That happened, I think, in 1967, so like 10 years before I was even born. And
but it's the story of the area. That's
yeah.
The other reason that we're glad to have the brewers on is we get the story straight from the source, and we get to hear the actual the reasons for things, because sometimes we look, it's the can art and the different story, and why is this one named this? Is this a reference to this? So it's nice to have it proper. But regardless of that, this smells outstanding. This smells like more than a lager. There's more going on in here than just sort of a standard lager. There's a sweetened flavor off of it, and it's almost kind of malt, some sort of malt forward in there.
Yeah, it's going to be a more malt forward kind of lager.
Talking
like a German Oktoberfest.
Yeah. Cheers, Ian.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Dante. Cheers, Les.
Been a favorite at the tap room. It's done well. Been really popular. Yeah.
Oh, that I would just happily say that is a lager with some body to it.
Oh yeah.
I am that is super pleasing.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think it's got like a lot of body, a little bit of sweetness, but the sweetness is balanced with the bitterness of the hops. I think it's a well balanced, pretty drinkable.
I'm catching
very European feeling.
A very tail end bitter, just at the very tail end, but it smooths out. It doesn't overstay its welcome or anything, and you're getting it's a wave. Well, not a wave, but just a little voyage of sweet to bitter.
One of the biggest compliments I ever got as a brewer was from a good friend, Aaron Miller. And he told me, he's a big craft beer fan. He said that he finds my beer interesting because it comes at you in waves. It's not like a one-dimensional. I find like one-dimensional beer, you taste it and you're done. It's kind of boring, but I like to have the flavors of the beer come at you in stages. You know, like there's usually a front, a middle, and a back end on the beer, and I find that it's entertaining. Like, I guess maybe coming from a bit of a food world too, it's just, I find like food and beverage should be entertaining. It's not just about, quenching your thirst. It's not just about getting drunk. It's about the entertainment of it.
It's quite, I'm finding this really quite distinctive for a lager, which is what you're alluding to there. There's a lot more going on to it than just your bog standard lager. But it's not reminding me, I have to say, Les, of a German lager. It's more full-bodied than it's more distinctive than a German lager, to be honest, in my opinion. But strangely, what it does remind me of, when you talk about smell being most closely connected to memories. Going back to, I was asking really how old your son was when he started drinking. Well, my dad, bless him, was brewing homebrew by the bucket load when I was in my early teens. And I used to go around there and quite happily help him get through his home brews. But he brewed it from scratch. There weren't so many kits back then. He did used to make the odd kit. But what this reminds me of is some of his home brews. And that is not a bad thing, by the way. They were very distinctive. And it had the nose of it. Ross, when I cracked this open, and I was going to say it, but it's gone away a little bit now. I said in the past a couple of times, we both said it.
Your butterbean?
The butterbean, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. This has got a slight butterbeaniness to it. I don't know if you're getting that, or
I wasn't
whether
getting
or not
that in mine. But where you were going for a British homebrew, I was reminded of when I went to my homeland with my dad. I'm a first generation Nova Scotian from the Scots, so my dad is from Glasgow, grew up there. But when we go back home and we go to all the different pubs, and there's pubs where in Nova Scotia we have dollar stores. Or sort of just the frequency thereof. You walk 2 blocks down a street and there are 5 pubs to go into, and that's what we did one afternoon. But when you go in, there's this is why I love the eclectic barrage of when you go into a tap room or a Nova Scotia craft brewery and try this one. It's our new, our fancy legged, and there's a drawing of a lady with her leg kicking up in the air. Everything's got a whole lot of pageantry and novelty to it. Over there, you walk into a pub and it's called something like the Ugly Goat, and there's just the barman's behind the bar, and he's been there for at least 100 years, just in that same position. And he says, "What do you want?" And he said, "I'll have a pint of beer." You want a pint? Right. Boom, and there you go, and you get a pint. There's no choice. You get a pint based on what that pub is just brewing in the back. And it's a golden ale with a lot of body to it, and malty. None of this hopped up nonsense that we get over here with your super hop. Not that there's anything against that, but it's more of a fashion and a fad to sort of the Nova Scotia craft brew industry. But this reminds me a lot more of, in the pub, here you go, boom, that is your beer, and this is the one. And it very reminds me of that.
It's like a good home brew and that's not a bad thing, is where I was going with that. It doesn't taste mass-produced, and I know you're not mass-produced, Les, because you are by definition still. Are you not still a microbrewery?
Yeah, pretty small.
Okay, but it tastes like something that we would put love into in making ourselves, and I like that.
It's good. I mean, our tap room being next to an Air Force base, it's interesting because we don't have the typical Nova Scotia clientele. We get people that have traveled a lot and they've been deployed. You know, they've spent time all over the world. They've, you know, or they might be they might come from Vancouver or Montreal or a place like that where there's a big craft beer scene, and you know, or been overseas. So they have a pretty broad experience with food and beverage, more so than average small town Nova Scotia folks, which is fun. Yeah, they're pretty well traveled people. Like they did go a lot of places and try a lot of things. Yeah, and they're up for it. You know, there was a guy from Australia that was there for years. He was on loan to the Canadian Air Force. So they come with a pretty broad experience for food and beverage, which is fun. It's great for us and my team because we get to experiment with the food and the beer bigger than what you would probably normally expect from rural Nova Scotia.
And do they have anything going down under vis-a-vis a craft brewing explosion that we have here in Canada and in the Maritimes?
Yeah. I know with the brewing network out of Berkeley, California, the Canadians and the Australians were the two biggest countries, I believe, behind American for listenership. Yeah,
that's interesting. Because I would wonder what that said Australian would think, because of course, when I think of Australian lagers, and if this is a lager, this is a world away from anything that I've tried. And of course, the big two, the Fosters and the Castlemaine 4X.
Tis not a Foster's.
No, absolutely not. I find those, and you know what? When I was growing up, I was and I had a group of teens that I used to hang out with. We used to go drinking all the time. Me and 5 other lads, and me and another guy were bitter drinkers, and we were the only ale drinkers, bitter drinkers in the group. All the rest were lager boys, and they were drinking the Fosters and the Castlemaine 4Xs and the Tennants, etc. And I found those very tasteless. You can't say that about this for a lager. And I don't know what differentiates. We've been through this. What the brewing process which nails it as a lager as opposed to a Kolsch or a Pilsner or a blonde. Whatever this is, it's like a home brew, a nice local home brew. I love it.
Well, that's good. As long as you enjoy it. Because you know what? Sometimes we can get all pretentious about all the terms and the rules and this and that, but if you enjoy it, you enjoy it.
Yep. Well, Ian's always giving me a hard time because when I see a percentage of a certain percentage, I say, "Well, that's a bit low, isn't it?" And he says, "No, it's not a bit low." And a 5.4 for a lager is, even I'm saying that's a bit up there for your average, definitely for your average lager that we try.
Yeah.
So you got to be a little careful, I guess. You can't just go out and say, "I'll have 3 Festbiers, please."
No.
I sent that photo to you last night, Ross. I'm sorry, Les. I'm not going to leave you behind here for a moment. Just alluding to something that I drank yesterday, which was, you mentioned it earlier on, a dark lager. Now, I'm going to mention one of your... They're not really a competitor because we're talking about Moosehead. They've been in the game for many, many years. And I think one of the reasons why the big boys, let's call Moosehead a semi-big boy. Whatever. They get it. They are diversifying, of course, over the years, and clearly they feel threatened by the craft brewing industry, so that they're not resting on their laurels, and as a result, they are producing some small batch craft beers which are appealing to the more discerning imbiber. And I tried one of theirs last night, and I tell you, for a start, the first thing that struck me about it, I don't want to take the shine off of what we're doing here, but we're talking about, this is a lager. And that's what struck me about this thing was, for a start, it was $3.90 in the liquor store. It was on special. And I thought, I'm having that because it's a lager and it's a dark lager and it's 6.5%, Ross. None of your 5.4 pissy stuff. This was a 6.5% lager.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it was, and I'm messing around, of course I am, I really like this. It was so wonderful. And it was. I still can't get my head around the whole idea of a dark lager. This is a golden stroke copper-colored lager. To me, a lager, like you mentioned, Ross, is this kind of yellowy, gold, clear.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've explored, but even Les mentioned that there are many different types of lagers, and I'm sort of, okay,
yes,
that's
yes.
It's eye-opening, and this entire voyage for us has been all about the eye-opening opinion changers.
Yeah, well, like I said, you go to a bar now and say, "What kind of beer do you have?" And they say, "We have all kinds." But what they really mean is they have multiple versions of the same thing, which is an American
IPAs.
lager.
Yeah.
Well, no, like not even like most bars and restaurants don't even have that.
No.
Like they'll have when they say they have all kinds, they mean they have Bud Light, Budweiser, Keith's, like you know what I mean. They have basically all the same. Corona, like basically all the same.
They get really excited when they say, "Oh, we do have craft beer," and I perk up and they say, "We've got these 3 from Fine Company," and I went, the first time I went, "Who?" And then I looked it up, and now I don't even try the Fine Company stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, explain, please.
Well, you know how your Moosehead and Keats are doing here's small batch, and they're doing this and that. So what if they did that, but they did that, and then they kind of had their own little company name for that? So basically, Fine Company is Molson's small batch attempt.
Yeah.
And it's
okay.
And you've seen that for years now, like. Heineken bought out, what was it? Lagunitas Brewing Company, and I think Goose Island got bought up by AB InBev, and they're buying up these brands, or they're making these pseudo craft brands, and
is it sort of, so you're up there, you're on the 40th floor of your skyscraper, and you're in there, and you're in your board meeting, and someone's saying, "Gentlemen, no one's buying our beer anymore. Should we make it better?" No. Just buy a small company from down there, release it under that name, and then people will buy it again. So just sitting around this table, we're all agreed. Don't try to make our beer taste any better. Just rebrand it to another brand that we've bought. We're good on that? Okay, yeah, let's go. Woo.
Yeah.
Yes.
What a decision process that is.
You're still up.
But that's like big companies that have. They have investors, and they have to post a quarterly earning, and 2 or 3% is like everything, right? Like that's all they care about. They're not caring about the craft or the art or any dignity or any history or anything like that. They're only concerned about posting a profit to keep their jobs. That's it.
What I do see
and you see some of the recent beer companies that have these advertisements that have a value, and then when they get a backlash, they flip their values and back and forth and back and forth. They don't really have values. They have quarterly earnings. That's it.
Advertisement and numbers. But what I think is probably the best compliment to the Nova Scotia craft beer industry is that the big, huge, could not be toppled from the top of the beer pyramid beer makers here in the Maritime. Keats is a pretty big established thing. They had to make some sort of investment, some sort of change, and saying, "Oh, I guess people are wanting something like that." So the Nova Scotia craft beer has made people realize that, "Oh, wait, yours tastes like piss. Can we have something that doesn't taste like piss?" Reluctantly, fine, we'll try to make something that doesn't taste like piss. Oh my God, you guys are so demanding. So because of the demand for Nova Scotia craft beer flavor, interesting stuff going on, the big, huge, unstoppable juggernaut commercialized industry beer makers had to come up with a little bit of a change, and I have to say that's got to compliment the Nova Scotia craft the beer makers, the smaller ones like yourself. It has to be a compliment.
I mean, not really, because I don't look at it that way. Alexander Keith was probably very much like us craft brewers when he started, like the man Alexander himself. You know what I mean? Like, I took a keg of my Big Stink IPA to Black Sheep restaurant in the Keith's Alexander Keith's Brewery Market. I sell them a 50 liter for weeks, for years now, every week. So I had this pleasure of putting my IPA on this dolly and wheeling it through that market and up the stairs and into this place. And I'm in this building that's got all this history. And I'm not thinking of the big, international company that owns Alexander Keith. I'm thinking about him as a young man, like starting all this. Like he was an entrepreneur. He was taking risks. He was doing things. You know what I mean? Like, and I think he would have a lot more in common with me than he would the board members of his own company now.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And that's pretty cool. Like you're walking through these halls of this Nova Scotia beer, the beginnings of this beer industry. And it's pretty cool. I feel a bit of a camaraderie with Alexander Keith, the man, not the company.
No.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people people start to cook because of passion. People start to brew because of passion. People start these things out of passion. And the craft people that do these things are different kind of people than the board members in the Sky Ride. I mean, it's a totally different thing. I don't even concern myself with them. We're not in the same business. We're not. Not in the same business at all.
I'm just convinced that the boardroom people felt threatened by quality. Well,
you know what?
They felt threatened by numbers.
Me, I don't even care. They're worried about me. I'm not even worried about them.
But they're not. You're right. We're humanizing it. They don't humanize their decision. Everything is numbers. So your success meant that they needed to invest in different numbers and change what they were doing number-wise.
But they can't fool people. They can't fool people because people want to go to a place and meet the brewer. They want to hear the story. They want to know it's local. They think they can fool people. They can't fool people. They're chasing their tails. They're panicking because they lost 0.25% of sales or something. They're not really fooling anybody.
This guy, my intrepid co-host, he keeps saying, these small batch Moosehead ones are pretty good, and they're kind of technically craft beer. Should we review them on the show? And I'm sitting here, I'm gnashing my teeth, saying, no, it's got to be all the little independently owned. Aren't those the ones that we're supposed to be, promoting? And this is the industry that I love, that I want to share and talk about. I almost don't want to give them the legitimacy to be invited
Ross,
and compared.
Yeah,
I know.
but
if I may come in at that point, I totally hear you 100%. We're not here to big up the big boys, but as we did that crazy thing about 6 months ago when we took Les, please close your ears at this point. We took a Keith's, we took a Molson, we took an Oland, we took we took some generic brands, and we decided we were going to go back and try some of these generic brands to see what we thought of them after all these years, because of course neither of us drink Molson, Canadian, or Oland.
I wanted to make sure we were still giving them a hard time with good reason, and we are.
Right. Well, no. If on that line, Oland actually really was quite good, and weirdly, Alexander Keith's IPA, since they changed their recipe, isn't skunky either. It's actually pretty okay. It's not an IPA, but that's neither here nor there. So what I'm suggesting is, Ross, that maybe, as I was suggesting last night, by the way, that black lager that I was mentioning earlier on by Moosehead, and again, we're getting a little bit off track, was amazing in my mind. I thought it was so freaking good. I loved it. And it's good. Whatever. So what I'm suggesting is maybe, Ross, if we want to do a future show surrounding the bigger players and their craft brewing or small batch offerings, that might not be such a bad thing. That's not to say I want them to drown out the likes of Les and his peers, who clearly are forcing them to change their hands and shuffle their hands a little bit, because if they didn't, they'd have just been still passing us out the crap. And they're having to rethink the whole idea of brewing and appealing to people that don't walk into the NSLC and say, "I'll pick up my Bud Light or my Keith's Light and walk out with." And those people aren't interested in beer; they're just interested in what they know.
But I mean, those things aren't bad. It's just different. You know, like sometimes you got to eat at McDonald's, but sometimes you get a really great burger. You know what I mean? Like it's not bad, right or wrong. It's just a different game. It's a totally different thing.
I'm going to we're gonna crack into the next one, which is the Big Stink, which is the IPA.
Yep.
And it is coming in. There it is. It's up at 6.4% IPA. And we can talk about several things while we crack into this and pour it. We can talk definitely about the Big Stink IPA, but Ian has also mentioned the B word that we get to discuss because as of yesterday, the month of April is Burger Wars month. And I happen to know that there is a Burger Wars burger coming out of the Roof Hound restaurant this month, is there not?
Yeah. Oh, we've been doing, I think this is our fifth or sixth year in the Burger Wars. Yeah, really good cause for the children's food program in the Valley. We always look forward to it. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, good cause, but it's a little bit of pressure. You know, you got to come up with something creative and interesting. You got to come up with something that it gets their attention, but not so weird that they don't want to eat it.
Yep.
So it's we put months of work into it. This year, we're doing a burger called The Count, and it's inspired by a Monte Cristo sandwich. So it's an egg-washed bun and beef patty from Diobin's family meat market there in Bridgetown, and the Diobin's ham and provolone cheese and a blueberry lime jelly on it. So I didn't know. I mean, I love Monte Cristo sandwiches, but I didn't know that Monte Cristo sandwiches were usually served with jam other places. Not so much around here, but I guess other places. So we made like a blueberry lime jelly on it, and it's good.
We're Nova Scotians.
The tartness of the blueberry and the lime kind of cuts through all the fattiness of the stuff. Yeah, it's delicious. So
I feel like as Nova Scotians,
today was the first day for us.
We seem to certainly culinarily have a history of what's around, and that's sort of where most of our food has come from in general. And we've changed a few recipes. When you come out to Nova Scotia, people say, "Oh, this isn't how you have it where you're supposed to have it." We didn't have the thing, so we just put something else in it, and it's fine. And this is a Nova Scotian Monte Cristo might be different than you'd get somewhere else.
Yeah.
The smell off of the Big Stink
IPA, but not an acidic IPA.
Not an acidic.
We've had this IPA. We've had this big. Les, when we were there 2 years ago, of course, we got flights, so we got a burger that night. If it was in June, it was unfortunately outside the old Burger Wars dates.
It was,
but I had a burger there.
You enjoyed your burger very much, yeah.
When we were on location. And of course, the Big Stink is it not? Is it your flagship brew?
I would say, I think it's like almost always top of the sales.
Okay.
It's probably what we're known for most. Yeah. Because it's we won a gold medal all in Canada for the Brewing Awards in 2017, Best IPA, which was we were shocked.
Wow.
Did not expect that at all. Very, very happy about that. And that's the biggest category. I think there was 64 or 84 beers into that category.
In the IPA category?
Yeah, that's the category everybody wants to win.
Not surprised at all.
There's 1,000 now. You've got 1,000.
Yeah.
You've got to
We are... I mean, we're beer enthusiasts. We try everything, but we are... reluctant IPA drinkers, I guess would be about the most polite way of putting it. It's not our favorite genre. We know kind of where it's going to go. And so the question is it the Big Stink because you are under... You have no control over it, but when you make an IPA of this caliber, it is going to have a very hoppy aroma. Is that kind of the...
Yeah. Well, there was a few reasons it got its name. So... I I did not expect to make IPAs. The first tanks I ordered didn't even have dry hopping ports because I told the manufacturers, don't bother putting the $250 dry hopping ports on there because I don't make IPAs, like an idiot. And then here, a couple years into the company, I win the best IPA in Atlantic Canada.
Now, did you win that without a dry hopping port, or did you find?
No, the company grew so fast, I bought more tanks, and these ones I ordered with the dry hopping ports.
Okay.
Yeah. So the very first rendition of this beer came out as Roof Hound IPA because I was, I just put it out there. Didn't really have a name, just Roof Hound IPA. Mm. And the people at Stillwell drank it and loved it. And they were on the 902 Brewcast, the beer podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They were talking about how silly it was. They said, it's just so silly. You got these new breweries coming out making these killer IPAs. So it made a bit of a big stink. And then I noticed I dry hop with Columbus hops, which is a very unusual thing. People usually don't dry hop with Columbus hop. I dry hop with Columbus and Mosaic. Usually Columbus is used for like bittering hops. But when you dry hop with Columbus, you get a bit of a dank cannabis smell. So it's got a pot smell. It made a big stink in the industry.
Is that what the word dank means?
Stink. Yeah. I call it a dank, savory IPA.
But you're kind of sort of saying, it smells a bit like weed. Is that?
It does. I say it's like if you had like a stoner friend who broke his leg and he was in the hospital, you'd send him a fruit basket with a joint. And that's what this smells like.
But dank, then skunky isn't the same smell as skanky, right? Because there are some IPAs, and I've always thought that the traditional IPA by Alexander Keith, until they kind of messed with it a little bit, was a bit skunky. Do you know what I mean?
The skunkiness comes from hops being exposed to light. So a lot of those green bottles, like the Heineken bottles, and a few, like the Moosehead usually has a bit of skunkiness to it, which I find is interesting. I like it. I like that. I kind of find it interesting. I was always kind of gravitated towards that. Not a big pothead. I didn't drink till I was 32. Didn't do weed till I was 39. So don't judge me. But I kind of like that. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of different. So like the market was flooded with IPAs. I'm like, well, how do I make an IPA that will stand out? What do you do that make it different? So, back in the day when I made this, that's kind of the direction I decided to go. And it is a very popular IPA for potheads. We have a lot of people come in, they say, this is my favorite rolling beer. They wink, like mean they're rolling their joints. This is what it takes beer and it gives you a whole other market.
All right. I was going to say it smells hoppy, but it also smells like a sort of a citrus tang to it for sure. But I wonder, is that the Columbus hops or is that
the dankness and the weed characters come from the Columbus? A little bit of fruit from the Columbus, but the Mosaic brings it back, stone fruit kind of
Mosaic doubles
character. Right. Citrus and stone fruit.
Ian,
two immediate observations, Ross. Of course, we've tried the Big Stink. I've tried it a number of times. Mm-hmm. One, it looks like a classic. Let's call it what it is: a classic, slightly cloudy IPA. Are you filtering this, buddy? Because it's a cloudy. No,
yeah, right. It's got a little haze to it.
Just a little haze. Yeah, nothing.
It does have offensive. A slightly hazy IPA to it. The second thing, of course, it just occurred to me. You're talking about those stubbies. This is 500 mils, things. And, of course, tall boys are all 473. So, therefore, we're getting more bang for our buck here as well.
I guess. And not to get even more into it, but correct me if I'm wrong, but if you go into the Roof Hound location in Kingston and you buy a case... was that still? This was a couple of years ago now. There was a flat rate for a case of bottles.
Yeah, it hasn't changed. You can get their 12 half-liter bottles. So that's 6 liters of Big Stink for $60.
$60 for a case of your choosing.
Deposit in everything in. Yeah.
Nice.
I have gone in for a case of Big Brown more than once.
And the other reason I call it Big Stink is because brewers take a lot of pride in that aroma. You spend a lot of money and a lot of time and energy trying to get the aroma right. And it's just human nature. When you say it stinks, people always smell it. So when you want people to appreciate that aroma, right? You put so much work into it.
Well, not
if
only
you
that.
say Big Stink, people say, why do they call it Big Stink? Does it stink? And then they're going to take a moment to smell it. And that's half the pleasure of a great IPA.
Right.
It's one of my favorite cartoons, the old Sherman's Lagoon comic strip, the sharks living under the water. And one of them finds something on the ground, and it's just this little yellow thing. It's probably like chewed bubblegum or something, and and they show them to each other, and they say, "Oh, look what I found on the floor! Look what I found on the ground! Oh, look at that! Oh!" And the other one says, "Oh yeah, gross!" And they keep showing it back and forth to each other, saying, "Oh, smell that! Smell how gross it is! And, oh yeah, it does smell gross!" And they do everything to it, and just keep kind of one-upping the, "Oh yeah, that is gross!" And you're watching it saying, "Why are you doing that?" But then you realize that you would absolutely do the exact same thing yourself. Like, "Oh, smell it! Smell how gross this is! It's a stink! It's a stinker of beer! Smell this! Oh yeah, that is a stinker! Oh, let me try it! Yeah, I gotta try it and see what it tastes like." And it's the curiosity.
And a lot of people told me it was a terrible idea, so I did it anyway. To call it Big Stink.
What do you think the IPA enthusiasts in your little group would think of this?
Are you speaking to me?
Sorry, Ross, because occasionally Ross does have 3 or 4 real friends, not me, that actually like IPAs, and that's not that we don't like them. We are less taken to them by them than the malty forward beers, but the IPAs are obviously so huge, and the whole world loves them, and there are a bunch of people that occasionally we go and throw 6 of them.
Well, there's
at the same time,
there's so many
there's
so many in the NSLC that we try to get through them as much as possible, because there's too many.
So many of them.
But I think it's like 80% of the sales in the craft section.
Is it that?
Yeah, it's up there. It's really hot.
Crazy.
Well, it's been my curse for my entire life. If I like something, it's usually an unpopular opinion, and I'm not who anyone's selling to. Definitely not. But we bring on other people, and we bring Kier on the show. Kier is a big IPA fan. Candace and Rob last week self-professed. They said, "We are IPA fanatics. We love our IPAs." Yep. And I'm trying to remember. They said they had a favorite. What was their favorite IPA? Sadly, it wasn't this one, and I don't understand why. Because the concept of the whole drink NS Drive, we've got to try it all. We've got to try everything. So we drink the IPAs. We drink the double IPAs. We've had triple IPAs, which we like for some reason. But when it comes down to the really hoppy, the stinky, dank IPAs, we think, oh, you're sort of thinking to yourself, okay, I'm not ordering a second one, but we have to put on our IPA enthusiast's hat. And with my IPA enthusiast hat on, putting myself in someone else's shoes, saying, why isn't this? And yeah, I can see it now. Why it's the flagship? Why it's loved? And this, should win awards. Did win awards. It makes sense.
I think
not my favorite beer, but I get it. Where people move towards these flavors.
My brother is an IPA fan.
Oh.
The last couple of years, I've been back to Edinburgh. I'm going back this year. Thank goodness to see him again. The first thing he will head towards is a good IPA at the bar. I'm saying now he would be all over this, because it kind of ticks all the boxes for an IPA, even though it's not, like Ross was alluding to, it's not our favorite genre of beers. It kind of does what it says on the tin, and it's Ross. You do that thing when you say, it's not. I don't love this beer. I'm not giving it a 9 out of 10 because I love this beer. I'm giving this beer a 9 out of 10 because it's what an IPA is supposed to do.
This is what you're supposed to do while judging a beer.
And that's what we do on this show all the time. We say, and I think we've said this sentence more often than I can count. We've said, I don't like this, but it is a 9.5 out of 10. It is an out. We say this is so good for a sour beer, but I never want to put it in my face ever again.
Thank you. 'Cause I haven't been on Untapped in years because my mental health cannot handle it.
Oh.
Untapped tap, I hate it. People go on there and they'll take an award-winning IPA and they'll shit all over it. But then
Okay.
Bud Light Apple.
Then I have a suggestion.
I can't read this shit.
I have a suggestion because sometimes we try if we can't talk to the brewer themselves, we go for the website. I don't troll Facebook because, well, I hate Facebook, but I go for the website and I say, all right, I'm going to try to find a description for the beer. If I can't find it on the can, I'll find it on the website. And if I don't find it on the website, Ian looks up reviews on Untapped and things go downhill very quickly.
I haven't been on there in years. I can't do it. There's so much bullshit about my beers on Untapped. Like, people just make up stuff. Like, I don't even know where they're coming from. Like, a great sour beer, and they say, doesn't even taste like beer, and they'll give it like a 1.
Well, it's a sour. It's not supposed to. And so is this someone drinking a sour beer and thinking, this doesn't taste like Olin's?
Yes, that's what that is.
Well, get it freaking down. We had, well, my wife, she likes beer-ish, but she tends towards like a fruit, like a shandy, a radler. And when the sours came out, loves the sour, really loves the sour. And we came out for, what was it called? It was the pear, no, it wasn't a pear one. You had a sour a year or two ago, and mojito, the mojito sour.
Mojito sour, yeah.
I liked that. I thought
it's a fun one.
I thought it was really
sour.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
Full of mint and lime.
Yeah, my problem is if I like it, she usually says this isn't very much of a sour, because if I like it, then my face is not being exploded by the sourness of it. Yeah. But oftentimes I say, yeah, I can get behind this. But I really enjoyed the mojito sour. She liked it as well. So again, we have to put our sour hats on. Ian has decided to completely avail himself from trying sours because he hates them so much. But luckily, I have my wife who I get to say, all right, tell me how good this one is, and we try a few of those ones.
Thanks.
But
I appreciate.
I need to get one in the tank. It's almost spring. I need to get one in the tank. That's right.
100 years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I was asked by a friend from the university, I'm going somewhere with this, from the university newspaper at Acadia University. She told me, hey, can you do me a favor? Here's a CD. And I know you watched this TV show. It was like a soundtrack for a TV show. I think you watched this TV. Would you do me a favor and write a review for this so I can put it in the paper? And I went, I've never written anything in my whole, what are you talking about? And she said, no, just do it. I said, okay, fine. And my brain went immediately to, well, okay, because it's a show. So it's a soundtrack to a show. It's not one band. You're not saying, all right, I'm listening to a Pink Floyd album. I have to get in a very Pink Floyd mentality. But it was a spectrum because it was about a show. So I said, all right, every track is not going to be for every person because it's obviously catered to the show and how the moods work at the certain times. So you have to be objective about this. So you have to explain kind of what each track is all about. And I found myself, I was explaining, I don't want to say hardcore rap, but certainly a bit more of an edgier hip hop rap than I was used to. I certainly listened to in my own experience, but I'm listening to it saying, all right, this is not the music that I usually listen to, but I have been asked to explain this to people who have maybe not seen this. So this is my response to why do you drink IPAs if you don't like them? Why do you drink sours if you don't like them? Is it because we have to drink everything and we have to tell people that what this is it's smooth the whole way through. You're getting, like you say, that dank flavor. Definitely in the middle. It builds a little bit, but it's smooth. It's a cascade. It's a beautiful arc the whole way through. Does not leave you uncomfortable in the back end. The flavor in the whole way through is obviously an IPA and a lot of hoppiness going on, but it doesn't ruin your day. So again, as a non-IPA drinker, I think IPA drinkers will love this. This should be their favorite, and it's that objectivity that I feel like I've had for my whole life because you read reviews for movies, for albums, and for things like that, and someone has just decided that they want to wax poetic in the most debilitating, insulting way possible, and they say things like, "Oh, if the entire chorus line of conga girls could dance on top of a dead raccoon, this is what this would smell like." And you're like, why did that sentence need... That doesn't describe anything. That's just you saying that you know how to open what's English for Bechamel? A dictionary, but a synonym dictionary.
Thesaurus?
Thank you. Oh my god. Sorry, I went through.
What I would say, what I would say about this, it says you were talking very, very. You wax so eloquently in your brightly coloured sweater,
I
Ross.
went on
When
way
you
too
when you
long.
start going,
Sorry.
as IPAs go, I'm going to take this down a little bit. This to me is doing everything an IPA is supposed to do for people that like IPAs.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I found that the great fruitiness that is always apparent with an IPA was tempered by some orange peel zestiness, which makes it a little easier for me to handle than the smash versions, the single malt and single hop things, which blow my face off. This is it's smoother, it's easier to drink, it's not as acidic or as bitter or as sour as many of their peers. You remember when we had that big face off and we liked the Nine Locks the IPA,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really, really arrogant way of saying this is the IPA, but they called it the IPA, and we had to agree with them that night. We thought, actually, that is the best IPA we tried tonight. This is what an IPA is supposed to do, I think. I don't love it, but it's really, really good.
It's quintessential
for IPA lovers. And I can't, because I've got 2 fingers worth left. I can't compare with that.
No,
so I don't know why I left it.
I don't know either, but I did too.
No, you did too, Les. It's a really good IPA, and I understand why it's won awards left, right, and centre.
I think, like, with myself, I was explaining to a bartender last night, I like bold flavors. I like things like a bit of a throat punch. I like black coffee. I like funky, thick red wine. I like straight whiskey. I like IPAs. I like big flavors. And when I was developing the Big Stink IPA, I kept coming back to this one line, this one saying that kind of helped us dial it in. And I said, I want it to be on the edge of insulting. Like on the edge of insulting. Like you want it to be aggressive and in your face, but not turn you off to the point where you don't want more of them.
And
you know what I mean?
That's where we keep seeming to drink the ones that have gone over that edge of insulting.
Yeah. Because I'm in the business of selling beer. Right?
Yeah.
I want it to be a great beer. I want them to enjoy the first one. I want them to enjoy the 6th one. Here I'm in the business of selling beer. So you want it to be like challenging to the taste buds. You want it to be entertaining. Just on the edge of insulting. Because I don't know why it is, but people feel a little tougher drinking these aggressive beers and bitterness.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Now's where we get to make fun of the general public. And we do this all the time.
Keeps you coming back too. Because if it's too sweet, you're not going to drink a bunch. If it's too bitter, you're not going to drink a bunch. You want something that's going to keep you coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I agreed.
On the edge of insulting.
But we talk about the general public, and I'm partially convinced that the whole concept of an IPA is the popularity of the IPA is, guys, I found something, you had to drink beer as a kid, despite the fact that as a 15, 16-year-old, you hated the taste of it. But you said, oh, I drink beer because it's gross. Oh, yeah, I'm having a good time. And that I feel like that has extended into this IPA. I have to have the hoppiest, absolutely blow your face off enough IPA beer in order to say to everybody, yes, I am definitely drinking the manliest form of it. It's that, we used to try to eat the sour candy or the hot firebrand. You're eating the hot wings and the IPA in kind of the same vein of, yeah, no one else can touch me. Get out of here.
Yeah.
It's a chili thing, isn't it? Like I can do 2.4 million chilies, and yet the next person next to me can only do 1.7. He's not drinking. He's not taking as many chilies on a Schofield scale.
I was going to say, are you talking about Scovilles?
Yes, I think is it called the Scoville? Yes, absolutely. And the curry people that say, well, I can only take I can't do a fowl. I can only do a chicken tikka masala or what. So they want to one up themselves and say, you've got to have this really hoppy beer because it's the best thing available. And it's not necessarily the best thing available. It's just like, let's try and out hop the next person. And now you said it earlier on, Ross, and since we have found out, Les, since we've been doing this, that when we started drinking a bunch of these single hopped IPAs,
the smash ones,
the smash ones, we assumed that the double and the triple would be obviously by definition twice as many hops, therefore twice as much bitterness and sourness and acidicness as the single malt and single hop variety would be. And by definition, the triple would be even more so. And we were like, how on earth are we going to handle the double and the triple? Because the single blows our faces off and makes it, it's like paint stripper, some of the really, really harsh ones. But we've learned that totally is not the case. And it's the opposite. And we're drinking these double IPAs and triple IPAs and going, why is that so bloody smooth? And I'm able to drink an 8 or 9 or 10% triple IPA, whereas the 5% single malt and single hop variety one is like putting fingers down the chalkboard on a. So and we've had it explained to us. Do you do a double and a triple IPA in Roof Hound?
I have.
Okay.
But I'm a brewer who also works in the tap room. So, and being a bar owner and the liabilities and all that stuff, and you have to deal with customers, sometimes it's not always great to serve people a 9% IPA because then you have to deal with them. Yeah.
You got to call them cabs back to the airbase.
I'm a little bit of a rare bird where I'm not just a brewer. I'm not just the guy that delivers the kegs. I'm not just the guy that, works in the tap. I'm all these things. Like I'm all those things. I brew the beer. I deliver the keg to the bar. I talk to the bartenders, what they think of it. I'm serving the pints to the customers in the tap room, getting feedback. And I like that. I like that I had contact with all the different sides of the business. It's kind of fun. And I'm involved with the food too. I mean, it's kind of rare. I don't know if I'm spreading myself too thin.
You mentioned, I was going to ask you about that. If the Burger Wars burger was a kitchen and kind of head chef kind of decision, but it sounded like you were right there for the process. Yeah,
I came up with the one pretty much solely this year. I have the best kitchen staff I've ever had, but they're all Hindus. They don't do beef. So they were like,
guys, I have bad news.
All right, well, let's do that. I had to make the Irish stew for St. Patrick's Day, and I had to come up with the Burger Wars burger.
All right, this year we're doing the Sacred Cow blank space burger. It's just it just hovers. There's toppings on top, and
if you're taking care, you're obviously taking care of all the customers to such an extent that would explain the cable knit cardigan that my grandfather would go to say, "I'm taking care of you boys. I'm looking after you."
But it's fun. Like I get to imagine the beer, create the beer, deliver the beer, and then deliver the beer to the table, and then talk to the guys after on what they thought and get direct feedback, and then implement that on the recipe changes and all that. I love it. I wouldn't want to do it any other way.
Ian, are you ready? I'm so glad. I am, for numerous reasons, I am so glad that the Big Brown is the highest percentage of the beers we're drinking tonight, because we get to drink it last. I get to wax. I will try not to wax too poetic about this, but I just have nothing but wonderful stories, happiness, and gratitude over this, what I consider easily one of the best beers going in the province right now. And I judge people pretty much who don't agree with me. And I said, have you had the Big Brown from Roof Hound? I said, it's just the best thing going. It's the best thing in the province.
We've had this several times, haven't we, Russ? Let's be honest. So this is just like the Big Stink. We're not. This is no spoiler alert here. We've had this before. It's the best beer I have had, but the Big Stink, I knew I was letting myself in for with the Big Stink because, Les, anyway, I spent so many years in Kingston. I used to go into your establishment all the time. I'm a little further away now. I don't go into there as much, but the Big Brown, I'm very used to. I'm very used to the Big Stink. I knew I was getting myself in for here. And the Big Brown is, spoiler alert, it's really good. That's all I'm going to say.
It is the very first beer I ever created on my own.
Yeah, I'm so happy to learn that.
Yeah. And it hasn't changed much. It used to be 9% in the early days.
Oh man, I think I remember a bit of that because it was on tap at Troy for a number of seasons. Troy Restaurant in Wolfville.
The raisins. They felt that the raisins would pair really well with the lamb there, and they went through a ton of it. But then the market shifts to IPAs, and they've gone through the different IPAs. Yeah.
But when a million years ago, when I was in my mid-20s, I went to a friend's bachelor party one night. We toured a lot of Halifax. We ended up somewhere on Spring Garden Road. What was it? Some underneath of of your father's mustache, they had some sort of tap room under there, and someone said, "Oh, try this. It's the brown ale." And I was very early into trying beer and drinking things, and I was still very the most exotic thing I'd had at this point. Ian gives me a hard time. This was my Rickard's Red phase, where I said, "Ooh, no, you can't get me on just basic beer now. Sorry, I've tried Rickard's Red. I am a changed man. Sorry, I need something a little bit more going on." And someone said, "Oh, try the brown ale." And I went, "Brown? Sorry, isn't that the color of poo? What are you trying to tell me here?" I said, No. Try this." And I tried it, and I learned that day that, all right, brown ale is what absolutely speaks to me, sings to me. This is the beverage that I was built to drink. And it was a rather good one. And then many, many years later, I was in Wolfville, and my good friend, who was actually a server at Troy at the time, said, "You've got to try this one. You've got to try this. It's a brown ale." And luckily, my brain said, "Ooh, I've tried a brown ale and I liked it. Bring it on. Yes, bring on this big brown ale." Life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. And it just became, yes.
But it's not just your regular brown ale. The beauty of this is, of course, just like the old Imperial Russian Stouts, this is an Imperial brown ale, which means it's a wee bit stronger.
It's true.
And, so it's got, maybe Les can elaborate on that a little bit for us.
Good. Yes, absolutely.
Well, because of the story that my grandmother told me about my grandfather with the raisins and brown sugar, I wanted to incorporate you're a crazy beginning home brewer. You throw a bunch of shit in there, right? I think a lot of home brewers start that way. So I got the raisins and the brown sugar, and I'm feeling raisins and brown sugar, and it's reminding me of oatmeal raisin cookies. So I put some vanilla beans in there. And I put some oats in there. So to me, this is like grandma's oatmeal raisin cookie meets grandpa's homebrew.
It does remind me a bit of an oatmeal stout.
It's got some oats in there to give it a little more body. It's got real Madagascar vanilla beans, and it's got raisins.
You totally get the vanilla.
Yeah,
it's really stark.
But
kind of smooths it out, takes the edges off a little bit.
The little bit of the roasted smokiness the whole way through. It just sort of wisps a little bit. Ooh, you were mentioning about the the voyage that a beer sometimes will take you on, where the beginning, middle, and end, and somehow, without ever having gone to a beer sommelier, what was it, Cicerone, or what was the other one, Park Moncho? There's another word for it in Nova Scotia, I forget. But we've never taken any kind of courses, but we've learned that there's, okay, what's happening in the first third, what's happening in the middle, and what's happening at the end is important to tell a tale of what's going on. And we've had one, it was I don't remember if it was a smoked porter or a smoked stout, but it was smoky at first, and then it was sort of this beautiful chocolatey kind of malt thing in the middle, and then it was smoky again at the end. And I went, how'd you do that? That's where if it's two kinds of smoke, but it's got something different in the middle. But I'm definitely getting some really nice roast the whole way through here.
It's roasty, and I've got a sneaky feeling that, I mentioned earlier on that, Ross, that I didn't take my beer out of my beer has been in the fridge all bloody day, and I've forgotten to take it out. So I think as a result of that, the head has suffered. It's colder than I want it to be, and the head has disappeared straight away. I don't know if that because of the
the head on mine disappeared right away as well.
Yeah, it would be less carbonated than an IPA or something like that.
Right.
Intense.
Yeah. Okay.
The legs stuck around beautifully on both the Festbier and the Big Stink IPA. It did go away, but I don't care. It just tastes so good. I don't
If
care.
it tastes good, yeah, that's right.
It's not
I'm not that
whatsoever.
I do like to have a head on a beer that follows it down the can and lets me know just I drank. I drank another couple of fingers there. I drank another, and I do like that. And look, if I want to do that, I'll be drinking 4.2% Guinness my whole life, but I'm not. I'm trying to do different things. And this is an Imperial Brown Ale, which is full of flavour.
Oh.
It's got all those things that you've put in it in droves, and I can taste them all. The vanilla and the roastiness, and it's 7%. Oh, and I'm already feeling the evenings imbibing. Yeah,
it's got a warmth to it too, right? It's got this warmth to it. And I thank you guys for doing this, because I haven't drank this beer in a long time. It was like a very, exciting, passionate creation for me, probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Oh,
and I haven't drank it in so long, and it's not a go-to beer for me. And I'm really pleased that we did this, because I haven't sat down and enjoyed this beer in a very long time. So it's made me kind of rethink. It's good.
It's probably been maybe a year or two for me as well, actually, honestly.
Yeah.
Les.
Yeah.
It was your first. It was your first beer that
I created on my own. I made other beers, but I would use other recipes. This was my first original recipe.
Okay. And you're still selling it, clearly, because it's right here. How does it sell? How does it sell?
It sells pretty well, actually, because I think it's on a little bit of the sweeter end of the spectrum of our list, and that's a good introduction for craft beer, because the bitterness kind of turns people off. And when I realized craft beer was first starting in Nova Scotia, I realized when people take a swig of beer, they expect an American light lager. That's just what the brain's programmed to expect. And when they taste anything other than that, they freak out a little bit. And I think and I realized, you ever see, you think it's a glass of water, but it's a glass of Sprite or 7-Up.
Oh, yeah.
And you take a drink, and it's the most horrible thing you're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah. Until
your brain can process, okay, it's not water, it's Sprite. Everything is okay. I have a way to categorize that in my brain, and now it tastes right according to what you expect. And then when I found out when people are drinking beer for the first time and they're expecting an American light lager, they're going to hate it. They're going to hate Big Brown. They're going to hate Big Stink. But if you can give them,
though, right?
Yeah, but if you can give them terms that they can relate to. If you tell them when you're drinking this, don't think about Bud Light, think about an oatmeal raisin cookie. Then it gives them a reference point in their brain, and they're like, I can enjoy it. It's not, obscene. It's not horrific. It's not a shock. They have a reference point in the brain. So I would use a lot of culinary terms to help people get their head wrapped around what they were experiencing, to try and get them into, it's like wading out in the water when the water's really cold and you're just scared to get out there. You know what I mean? How do you lead people on this journey?
Yeah, you went through what's that called? The culinary thing that Canada did. What's that called?
Master Chef Canada.
Were you doing the brewing thing that you clearly got into after that? Could you match yourself when you were making a meal? Can you match yourself brews that you might want to create around some of the food that you were creating? Is that a thing that you can do?
Yeah, like food and beer pairings?
Yeah, absolutely. Because Ross, because you do these, you go to the city, do you not, Ross? And take and sit there and spend $60, $70, $80 on food and saying and then beers come to you and you pair them with those things because you're a connoisseur. I'm a Philistine. I don't understand how this works. I just know what I like.
It's an establishment in downtown Halifax called the Carlton, and they do craft brew showdowns.
Yeah.
And they match up craft breweries. Their chef, they have their kitchen, and their chef kind of prepares things, but they invite two usually craft breweries. One time they did cideries to kind of almost compete against each other, and then they say, here is our 5-course meal, and each brewery, we give you the menu ahead of time, and you need to think of a pairing beer with each of these dishes. And then at the end, so after every meal, you sort of say, oh, okay, I vote for this one. I think one night I was there, it was Big Spruce was against, I guess, the Church Brewery. I think one night was a thing, and you kind of voted for which one you liked. But in going there in the first place, we were all excited because we said, holy cow, we get, 5-course meal, whatever, don't care. But we get 5 different tastings of different beers. And in fact, we get 2 of them. So we get 10 different tastings of beer. Woo! And we were pretty excited about all the different tastings of beer that we were going to try. And we learned very quickly that the kitchen at the Carlton there on oh God, what's the corner, Grafton and something in Halifax, we stopped caring and noticing about the beer. The food was so good. It was so amazing. And we learned a lot of things about beer pairings because you'd give the beer a little bit of a sip. You say, okay, I like this beer over this beer because the 2 different tasting glasses with each round, and then you'd try to eat it or drink it with the food. Game changer. Wait, okay, this one really matches the food really well, where that one sticks out like a sore thumb, and you don't want that. So the voting, we had a really hard time. We'd make pie charts and things. We were into bar graphs and stuff. We were getting very serious about what we were deciding. But at the tail end of it, we started really saying, I just want to vote for the food. The food is so good. So if this, I wonder if it's a thing, I would recommend getting trying to reach out to the Carlton and their craft brew showdowns and getting. I would love to see Roof Hound in there.
I mean, it's a very popular, fun thing to like compare and contrast beer and food pairings. It's a fun thing. I mean, that's how we got the Big Brown into the Troy restaurant, is because they thought that the raisins in the Big Brown would complement the lamb on the menu, and that's how we got that account.
I was going to Troy for lunches occasionally because I was working in Wolfville, and ever since then, that was where I found that the Big Brown was effectively my favorite beer. And so I would, when they switched it over and said, "Oh no, now we're gonna put the Big Stink as the pair," oh, well, all right. I'm not really sure. I mean, I like it. It's fine. It's a good IPA, but you're sitting there with your lamb coffee. Not so sure it works. But it meant that I started driving out to the new location in Kingston and just buying the Big Brown in bulk, as it were.
Les, the original place you had down in Digby, is it still going?
No. So I opened the second one in October of 2019 in Kingston, and we ran the two simultaneously for a few months, and then we closed at Christmas with the intentions of reopening in the spring for the tourist season.
2020.
Yeah, and then there was no tourist season for 2 years. So, and then there was no staff for years. So yeah, I had to juggle some things around. I actually turned the old dining room into my new home.
What happened? No one's heard of what happened in 2020 that could have.
Yes.
I don't know, but we're still paying for it.
Yeah. Okay. So the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel, now is moved to Kingston.
No, I'm in Digby right now. I mean, the brewery is still here in Digby. Yeah.
Oh.
And the old dining room is now my home. And I sold my home, and I bought the building in Kingston and an Airbnb unit. So you just had to adapt and survive through COVID, right? Like, it's just, what do you do?
When I first heard about Roof Hound, there was a good friend of mine. I met him in Wolfville. He moved further into the city, but his family live in Digby. So his family, and they go to their cottage in Digby. And he said, "Oh yeah, went out to Digby again. Got myself what were his words? Got myself the peanut butter stout."
Yeah.
And I immediately, the ears went, huh? Pardon? How do I get my hands on this guy? And I think he's dropped the your peanut butter stout off to me at least once. And when I mentioned to I usually to my circle of friends, I said, "Yeah, I'm talking to Les at Roof Hound. Is anyone, do you want me to ask him anything?" And I think the exact response from my friend who has a cabin out in Digby, who's always brought me the peanut, says, "When's he going to make another peanut butter stout?" Was the only question I got.
Well, I love that beer, but I'm afraid that someone's going to die with the peanut allergies and stuff, right? I don't need that liability. I don't need that.
Buyer beware. No, buyer beware. It says peanut butter stout on it. So if if you are that allergic and you walk into the establishment, that's fine. Anaphylactic out of the floor.
You mentioned
it is worth it. If I had a peanut butter allergy, I would snap the EpiPen and drink that. It is just the nectar of the gods, that beer.
Ross,
what
you mentioned earlier on the off-track brewery. You said about them and about the fact that they were still doing subbies, but of course they are no longer a thing at the end of this month, is it not?
Yeah.
And of course, their peanut butter stout that we really loved would have been a wonderful awesome beer competition to do these two peanut butter stouts against one another. We loved that too. But they're gone. So by all accounts, Les, it's you can move into the peanut butter stout territory completely.
You're in time.
You've monopolized the whole genre here in Nova Scotia, unless another craft brewery has one that they're hiding.
No one will ever figure out the peanut butter stout.
Well, I made mine first. I mean, I opened way before that. I made mine first, and then I stopped because I was afraid. They started, and I think someone actually went to the hospital from because I think they told me something like a filler tube and a growler. Someone reused a filler tube from peanut butter stout and then fill some other guy's other beer, and the guy had a reaction and went to the hospital. I'm like, oh my goodness, like that's terrifying stuff.
Wow.
You don't want that liability.
No, you don't, but damn it, it's just so tasty. I mean, my nephew.
It's hard to keep playing brewery with $1 million lawsuit.
Can you do a shrimp IPA?
I'm allergic. That would kill me.
Shellfish and peanut butter lager. There you go. Just get it all in there. Strawberries, chocolate. How many allergies do I know from people? Oh, God.
That's enough.
I'm going to take this. By the way, this has been an absolute pleasure. The last bit I've got is the original Festbier. This is the
Oh,
2 finger Festbier.
it
I've
was
forgotten what it
that
tastes
was
like.
such a find. I was really curious. I wasn't sure, but oh no, I'm sold. I'm sold on the Fest beer. I'm definitely going to talk that up. But I will drink. I will definitely drink the Big Brown until the day I die. It's easily my favorite beer.
Yeah.
Les, I want to thank you so much for
Okay.
being here and for being here for a little bit longer than you meant to be. I hope I haven't
Oh,
taken
great.
up the entirety of your evening.
Yeah, come out for. I just want to say, come out to Burger Wars.
Yes.
And we have another red lager coming out very shortly too. It's not named yet or anything like that, but that should be out in the next few weeks.
I'm very curious about that. Is it in the style of like, because we've tried an Irish red, but what was the other one? There was some sort of an American red ale, or what was it? Or it wasn't an Irish red. It was another kind of red. I feel like we've tried an American red and it was a little too hoppy.
Right.
Mm.
To me, like this beer will be inspired by the Yinling. You know the Yinling? Have you had Yinling? It's like a Southern American beer from the South. You can get it like Florida, places like that. It's one of the oldest family-run breweries. They actually one of the few breweries to survive Prohibition in the States.
I have been to
One of my favorites.
I have been down to southern Alabama and wandered my way into the Panhandle, and I went to a brewery while I was in southern Alabama, and you know the guy said he said, "Hey, I've got a brown ale I'm really proud of," and it was delicious. It was fantastic. What was the name of that one? It was like, I don't know, Gator.
Gatorade.
Yeah, Gatorade. I can't. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of that brewery, but sadly no. But no, now I'm interested. A red lager. I will.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued about that.
Well, you have to come out and try it.
And
come in, we'll have a pint.
And the Monte Cristo burger. I wish I had the full schedule for when, but the first 2 weeks of April, where the Burger Wars is live in most of the locations. My wife and I happen to be Burger Wars people. We're going out to a couple of the locations. We did not get Roof Hound, but I figured that, oh my God, since we're already talking to you tonight, I definitely need to put the punch for coming out to Roof Hound in Kingston and trying the Monte Cristo burger. Please do try that. But aside from that, I want to thank Les and my co-host Ian for being here tonight, trying all of these tonight, learning all sorts more about Roof Hound Brewing in general. You can check out our podcast on most podcasty locations. We're Drink Nova Scotia Dry or Drink NS Dry, and at YouTube we're youtube.com/@drinknsdry. And you can find us on all of the usual places. Just I don't know, look it up on YouTube and Facebook and all that kind of thing. But we're here live every Tuesday evening, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. and then a little bit, kind of into the end.
Yeah.
Just a little extra. Whenever the beer's really good, we stay an extra 30 minutes late. That's just how it's going to be. And over at the YouTube page. But we'll catch you here every week. And thanks for being part of it. And we'll see you